Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I have here Mr. Danny Hallam. We are going to continue a conversation that I had with someone else on the subject of psilocybin. And if you're not familiar with that term, mushrooms, magic mushrooms, hallucinogens, that kind of thing. And okay, before you have any kind of preconceived notions about that, this is not something that is done for you to have these crazy trips and stuff. No, it's done in micro doses, and it is very beneficial to your health, not only your physical health, but your mental health as well. And we're going to talk about some benefits to that. I have been studying it, considering trying that myself. I'm not just running into this blindly. So I'm continuing the conversation because I want to get as much information as I can. And I hope maybe this can help you out there. So how are you, Danny?
I'm fantastic. Having a beautiful day so far. Thanks for having me.
It's gorgeous here in Austin area, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not too hot and not too cold, so I'm just perfect.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, as I said, we're going to talk about psilocybin a little bit more, and I know you work with a lot of people on that subject. And tell me a little bit about your experience with it personally, and let's get into a little bit of the benefits to you. And I know we're only limited on our time today, but I want to revisit this conversation because I know there's lots of other things to talk about, and I'm hoping maybe someone will put in the comments some questions so I could bring it up to you next time. But go ahead and tell us about your experience.
Yeah. So specifically with psilocybin, it's been a long relationship that's taken many forms. I had my first experience in a very recreational party setting. I think I was 14, pretty on the young side, which some other parts of my story started the substances way young. And for me, it was like, I knew there was something to this. It took me into such a deep inner personal state, while everyone else was like laughing and having a party, and drinking beers, and like that was my plan, and then it was like as soon as I took this medicine, not even knowing like that it was a medicine at that time, like something shifted inside of me, and it was like almost like the first time I experienced a sacred state of mind, but being very young, very naive, and having no idea. I just kind of went. We were at a lake house at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, and I just went and sat next to the water for like hours, just in this contemplative, philosophical type state. And so that's my first introduction to any psychedelics, and really there was a part of me that was not hooked in the sense of I needed to just go on psychedelic journeys all the time, but was like hooked in curiosity. And really it opened the doors for the beginning of my exploration of the psyche, of the human mind, of consciousness, of shamanism, and all that. And of course, it was I think within a few months I found probably within a year, around 14 or 15, all in the same month, I found the Carlos Castaneda books, Ram Dass's Be Here Now, and Carl Jung's Archetypes, which is all really heady reading for a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. But it was like, almost like a divine guidance, the way these things fell into into my lap, and being so young, it planted seeds, you know, because I still had 10 years of destruction and substance abuse and unhealed trauma and all of this stuff. But it was a seed that was planted in regards to what sacredness really was. And that seed took about 10, 12 years to really start to produce. And so that's my first introduction with it. You know, my history has lots of trauma, lots of numbing my trauma with substances, with drugs, with alcohol, really anything that's gonna get that dopamine fix in my brain and keep me numb from my heart. And sprinkled in that experience, I had a lot of deep psychedelic experiences, which would give me a kind of a recess from my addictions. You know, it was by no means was I carrying these medicines in a sacred way or honoring them, but it was always this recess of like, I could be on a opiate binge for 6 months and then, you know, take 5 grams of mushrooms and then like have a week of just like stillness and really kind of a taste of what a healthy mindset is. But then I'd go right back to, you know, my addictions. And in that state of mind, there was never an intention to quit the drugs. There was never an intention to heal. It really was like just an exploration of altered states of consciousness, of getting high, really. And then early 20s, you know, what people would call, I guess, a spiritual awakening. I see it more as a surrender, where it's kind of like I surrendered to what I've known was already there. And really, I gave up the fight, you know, and started looking into my heart, looking into my space, and entered in a mystery school and was a mystery school initiate for many years on a very abstinent route. No drugs, no alcohol, no substances of any kind. But there's always this part of me that knew when I'm complete with this phase, the jungle is calling me, you know. And so I spent 5 years in this mystery school practicing universal law, meditation, dream work, astral projection, you know, telepathy, some really far out, superhuman stuff. And then entered in the plant medicine world after that. Found my way to the jungle, working with ayahuasca, and you know, entering some deep initiative processes with the medicines, with some teachers, with some amazing people. And really that was the actualization of integrating all of this mystery school understanding. Studied body work, somatic work, trauma as well in that period. And so I started walking this medicine path where, you know, it's working with the tryptamines, which is the DMT, the ayahuasca, the psilocybin, you know, the 5-MeO DMT. And really, I got initiated into a path where it was like those became my teachers, and going on really intensive initiations and journeys, which at the beginning was like looking into the darkest corners of my own consciousness, you know, the shadow work per se, and getting really comfortable in the uncomfort, getting really comfortable in the pain, the suffering, and the hellish realms, I speak, because it's like was really called to walking that path of service in this specific way. And so what these initiations taught me is like getting comfortable in the hellish spaces so I can hold people's hands as they walk through their own. And, you know, it's through that process where the healing takes place. You know, to me, we can get into the science that's coming out of the psilocybin. We can get into, you know, all of the studies and everything happening, but it's not really the path I take. That's not the route I take. Because to me, it's all understanding the quantum reality of our spiritual nature, our multidimensional self. You know, it's the healing happens sustainably in the higher realms, you know, in the realms of thought, the realms of idea, the realms of the formless. And so really it's walking that shamanic path as I get to enter into the formless state and help either draw forth information or data from that formless state for the individual I'm working with and reflect it back to them, or go and do spiritual surgeries, or just love them enough to where they feel safe and comfortable to step into their own darkness and then walk out of it. You know, it's Joseph Campbell's work with the hero's journey, and in that, you know, the hero finds its gift, the hero finds its superpower when he walks into the underworld, and then he brings that gift out to save the day. And you know, with the Young's work, Joseph Campbell's work, really we're all walking our own hero's journey. We're all, you know, we get so excited watching movies and reading stories because it's an expression of our own experience. It's an expression, a reflection back of the constructs of the psyche and how we all walk through this world. And so really at the end of the day, the way I walk with some of these plant medicines is holding a safe container of allowing people to walk into the underworld, bringing their magic and bringing it back out into this world.
Well, you know, and then that's something I failed to mention when I introduced the whole thing, was the spiritual healing that you go through. I know that some of my ancestors, they were into the peyote and that kind of thing, and there was a journey there, but I didn't get to know that part of my family, so I didn't get to experience those things. I just know of those experiences. And being that I am a spiritual person, I used to be a religious person, but you know, we had that conversation off air, how religion was not for me. I'm more into the spiritual part of it, and you know, getting my relationship with God. And I don't think people take that into account, that when you have that part of your consciousness opened up, that it does allow you to see the darkness, but it also helps you to get past the darkness. The things that I went through as a child, I talked to you about that. You know, it has caused me trauma, and lived with depression for decades, and you know, the suicide attempts, and you know, just totally dropping out of society, the whole 9 yards. I have done everything I can to get off of those medicines. Those medicines weren't doing me any good. They were supposed to help me with the depression, and it seemed like, oh yeah, at first they were kind of helped. I don't know if it was a placebo type effect or what, but it just seemed like things got worse. And then when I got into meditation, then that's when I started to be able to handle these things a little bit better. I'm still having my struggles, so I'm looking for alternate types of medication to get away from it, get away from these pills that they, as I said before, they just want to shove down your throat, that aren't really doing anything but hurting your body. So that's why I got curious about it. I talked with the gentleman several months ago. He's out in California, and he's gone through a lot of the same things that I have. And he started telling me, you know what, I started the psilocybins, and it's really starting to help. And he's finding that he's not having those thoughts of suicide anymore. I've talking to someone else, they told me that there are actual health benefits to it other than just the mental part of it, which I'm also curious about, having, you know, the diabetes, the spinal problems, cholesterol, and high blood pressure, the whole 9 yards. So do you have any knowledge on the physical part of it?
Yeah, I have a little bit. I don't consider myself an expert on you know, the chemistry or the pharmacological makeup of that. You know, there's some amazing studies out there as far as like the neural pathways, and you know, especially with the microdosing, how, you know, I'm a big fan of the Stamets stack. Are you familiar with that, Paul Stamets?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, so Paul Stamets is he's kind of the ambassador of mushrooms in general. He's a mycologist. He's an amazing activist, and really a genius, and kind of the leader of the field of all things mushrooms. And so the Stamets stack is a microdosing protocol that's psilocybin, lion's mane, and niacin, and it's a 90-day process. And so there's been some studies coming out around that of it literally being able to change and recreate and make new neural pathways. So we can change habitual thinking, we can change our perspective, we can change the way our neurons are firing, and really it's you know, the biohack of our consciousness. As far as like, I work mostly with people in regards to the emotional aspects, the anxiety, depression. I don't work with a ton of people in regards to physical illness. There's other medicines for that. Specifically with the psilocybin, you know, and that's really where most of the studies are at, is with depression, you know, and to me, I think we have depression all wrong. You know, depression is, to me, it's a deeply spiritual malady. It's a disconnection from who you really are. And, you know, and I think the psilocybin, the ayahuasca, the DMT, the San Pedro, the peyote, they give us undeniable mystical experiences, you know, and, you know, you go into any ceremony and, you know, you take a non-believer into a ceremony, and then you have shared experiences, you know, where it's like when you're circling up and, you know, there's 3 other people that had the same vision of you and or that you had, and this and that. And so even someone that's going in where it's just like, oh, it's just a hallucination, you know, will come out of these ceremonial settings with this deep knowing that, all right, there's something more to this reality. This reality simply isn't this tablet I'm talking into and this meat suit, and, you know, it's layers and layers and layers of consciousness, of thought, of multidimensionality, the astral realm, the realms above that. And so to me, I think the healing of depression kind of, you have an undeniable experiencing of opening your mind and your heart to something far greater than you've ever known. You know, and to me, curiosity, you know, it's like every journey I go on makes me more curious for exploring this reality. You know, every book I read, I'm a bit neurotic in my study, like just always have been. But to me, it's like I will have a deeply spiritual experience from reading a new perspective, from, you know, reading a new book, from studying a new topic, a new area, because it's expanding me. It's giving me something that's far greater than my reality right here, right now. Right. And it's, you know, and so it's that level of like looking at the stars. You know, I feel so small when I look at the stars, but I find so much security in that. I find like, oh, my shoulders drop, and it's like, oh, you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself. And so when we're putting ourselves in situations of expanding our minds, opening our hearts, and this, to me, it's the same experience that I have of like when I'm gazing at the stars. It's like brings my human problems to like the smallest part of it. The stories that I run through, the woe is me, the victim mentality, it just lets me release that. And it's like, oh, you know, there is so much more meaning to this life that I can start making some changes to grab onto that, to hold on to that as well. You know, and to me, it's also kind of ironic, you know, Maria Sabina, she was they say she's the woman responsible for bringing magic mushrooms to the Western world. But she kind of took the opposite route, in that the psilocybin was for healing disease. in that it wasn't a spiritual experience. And there's quotes, I'm going to misquote her, but something along the lines of, she says, you know, you come to the mushrooms for healing and we go to church on Sunday for God, you know? And so it's another experiencing of looking at how many different perspectives are out there, how many different angles to work with some of these medicines exist. And it's just, yeah, we can let the walls down and explore the canvas with curiosity and creativity. And within that activates the joy, the love, the expression. You know, I've worked a lot with Akashic readings, like past life readings. And I had a recent reading tell me, Danny, your mission here is to help people break out of virtual reality and into a greater experience of reality. And so it's like, to me, I'd much rather go in ceremony than, you know, sit on my screen watching TV all day, because it's like, it's real to me. And then this is, it's not that it's not real. I can touch it, you know, it's here, it's now, it's my experience, but how much of it is hurting me? How much of it is, you know, not helping? And so then that can circle us around to like a basic tenet of shamanism, is that everything's a medicine, everything's a poison. Depends on your relationship to it, which brings us to relationship. You know, it's like, you know, recreational drug use, I think it's fantastic. Depends on your relationship with it. My relationship with how many hours of YouTube and this and that, you know, it's like, it can be really beautiful and really amazing. And, but like that, it can become a poison and start being detrimental. That's and true. So, you know, when you walk the shamanic path, it's what's your relationship to these medicines? Do I have this personal relationship dialogue with the spirit of the plants? And then that trickles out into what's my relationship with my family? What's my relationship with myself? What's my relationship to my clients, to my peers? What's my relationship to food? What's my relationship to my screen? What's my relationship to this reality, to my community? And so you start walking in that way where you spend more time thinking and developing about the things that inherently fill our hearts, instead of the chaos that our society has asked us and even forced us to spend so much of our mental attention on. So I know that's kind of went on a tangent in a big old circle.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and I have no studies or facts or numbers or anything for this. It's just my own personal thoughts and beliefs and experiences. When you are more spiritual, or you're trying to, you know, get that what's the word I'm looking for, your higher frequency, to have a better relationship with God, it seems like that does trickle down into taking care of your body and your mental health, and it spills out into that. It helps a lot. I mean, is that kind of what your experience has been? Is that what you believe?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like, you know, I believe the umbrella ailment of humans is the illusion of separation. You know, we can trace it back to, you know, the story of Adam and Eve and meeting the apple from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, of duality, of separation. And so it was like, when that to me, that's a story of taking this data that brings a paradigm shift in the perception of consciousness, where, oh, now this new paradigm shift of separation exists within the collective. And it is in that separation where, you know, I separate myself from you. We're seeing it all over, especially in this country right now, this, you know, insane duality, this just break apart, you're different than me, I'm different than you, and this and that. And it's like, and don't get me wrong, we absolutely have to have space to celebrate uniqueness and individuality.
Of course.
And that's the beauty of it to me. But it's, you know, back to that lineage in Adam and Eve is we were cast out of the Garden of Eden when we took on that knowledge, that data. And, you know, I think every human since then, that has been really their main process, is how do I dissolve this separation and know that everything is God. If God is the creator of this universe, you know, if it's source, you know, creator, whatever you want to call it, I left the desire to define these things a long time ago, because my tiny human brain, like, how do I think I can do that, you know? And when I surrender and trust in my experience, life becomes a little bit more manageable. But I think that's it, is that, you know, back to the separation is like, yeah, you know, if I don't see my body as divine, if I don't see the most mundane as divine, I don't know if I'm doing it right. You know,
True.
Whether they're the right or wrong, this is my personal dialogue with myself, you know. And there's time, for me, like, body is where I get the most distracted. You know, I'm all mind, you know, I do my mental disciplines, I take care of my mental health, and a lot of times I forget to take care just as well as my physical health, you know. And so there's always room to work and to grow and to move. But to me, that's what it is, you know, can I see God? Can I see the divine in all of things? Circling back to the beginning of the conversation, you know, it's like a part of my mission here is like the darkness. You know, I hold really beautiful space and being able to go through the messy stuff, I like to say. But that's where I see God the most, you know, the contrast. That's where I see the opportunity to embody our divinity, is by stepping into the fire, so to speak, and stepping in with the fire. And, you know, and so creating a safe space for people to step right into that and know that they're going to come out on the other end. Because that's what it was for me. That's what it worked for me. It was like, step into the fire over and over and over and over and over again. And then one day it was like, oh, I've done a lot of change. I've done a lot of healing. I can't even recognize those old versions of myself that walked, you know, in the same body earlier. And it's like, you know, when I reflect, just the other day, you know, a friend of mine, we've been really good. We've had a relationship for about a year. In the last couple of months, it's been really deepening our brotherhood. And it was like the first time we ever sat and like shared the dark parts of our story. And it's like, here it is, this guy that, you know, I call a dear friend and becoming one of my best friends. And he didn't even know that I was a drug addict, you know?
Oh, wow.
And it's like, because I'm so, like, not disconnected, I've just grown so far from it that myself, when I reflect on that version of myself 10 years ago, I'm like, how is that even in this same lifetime?
Yeah.
You know, and so, and I speak that to be a testament of, like, anybody can change, anybody can grow, anyone can heal. It's find the right support, find the right mentor, and be willing. How willing are you to go? You know, how willing are you to face yourself, to trust yourself, to look at where you don't trust yourself, you know? And then through that practice, you know, you develop confidence, you develop self-respect, you develop compassion for yourself. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, where'd my depression go? You know, because it's like, well, it's not that the depression was me, I was missing something. It was that I was disconnected from something that was always here, and I wasn't spending the time building that connection. And, you know, it's with anything, with any any new relationship, any old relationship, we have to put effort into it, to develop it, to maintain it. And so for me, I'm on a mission to help people realize that, like, that's where the magic lies. And also in that process, honoring that it also, there's a giant chemical factory happening within us. And so that's not to, you know, completely take away from the physiological aspect as well. And, you know, and that's where I integrate a lot of breath work. That's where I really help people integrate the microdosing, the diet. You know, our gut health is so related to our mental health. And so it's like the deep dives in the plant medicine to activate our consciousness, and then bringing it back down and working in the habits, whether that's our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, to build wholeness and well-being. And, you know, and then sometimes it's also maintenance. You know, sometimes we have, you know, in your case where there was a injury, you know, and something that there's you know, a damage to the body, where it's like, all right, how do we make your life the most manageable, you know, in that. And so it's like also not getting into that crazy woo woo of, you know, I'm gonna put my hand on your back and you're gonna be completely healed and whole, but
like you are healed.
right. And also not to say that that's not, I've seen some magic, I've witnessed some magic, you know, and
I have seen some crazy stuff in my day too.
But I don't think that's going to be everybody's story and everybody's experience. And for another conversation, we can drop into the karmic, the past life stuff. And, you know, some of the stuff we're dealing with is in this lifetime, actually a lot of it has nothing to do with this life. And it's, you know, I see, you know, you hear ancestral healing being talked about so much more, lineage, all of this. And so it's like, I really do believe we're at this, we're having this spiritual renaissance, right? Or the spiritual and psychedelic renaissance right now, because we're a bunch of warriors that incarnate right now, that's like taking the responsibility to heal our lineage, to heal our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, you know, in our physical DNA line, as well as our spiritual soul line. And, you know, and so when we do that, you know, we end lines of trauma. And so for me, and like the Lakota tradition, it's, you know, we think about the 7 generations behind us and our ancestry, and we make our choices for the 7 generations ahead of us. So when I'm in like a deep healing process within myself, I constantly remind myself, like, this is for my ancestors and this is for the future, because I desire to do that healing in me so I don't have to pass it on to the next generation. So then we can have a couple generations of free humans who, you know, they're going to be the ones who change the paradigms in the world. Like, we're doing the messy stuff and we're not going to get any of the glory. And I'm okay with that, you know?
I hear you. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end. There's a few things I would like to bring up next time. Number one being, you know, I'm sure there's probably someone out there that's watching this or listening to it going, oh, they're just a bunch of hippies and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, consider that. And also want to get a little bit more in that conversation about walking into the fire and kind of facing those demons. Because I know there was a time in my life that I didn't, and I'm paying the price for it now. And I guess I could assume that you kind of have the same mentality that I do, is that I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm just offering you an alternative way of thinking, or maybe to try something different. I guess that's safe to say.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like, my perspective is like, all right, cool. You don't believe anything I believe. Well, give it a shot, you know?
At least think about it.
Because even, you know, I talk with a lot of certainty, and, you know, but I think that certainty comes from my skepticism. Yeah. Because I was never, I've always walked into my spiritual world with a sometimes unhealthy dose of skepticism. and so for me, it's like, I'm not attached to my beliefs being right. I'm attached to what works, and I find that how I work and what I offer works incredibly efficient for everybody who chooses to come into my field, and I don't want to change you. I don't want to change your beliefs. I don't want anything that. I just want to help you,
Yeah.
and so that's it. And yeah, let's plan maybe a longer segment. Last
It
time
would be awesome.
Felt like we were talking for like 5 minutes.
That's true.
Yeah.
It goes by when you're having a great conversation. Well,
Uh-huh.
thank you for taking time out of your day. I'm sorry we had kind of a mix up today, and it's kind of been a little bit of both of us, and things to do, but I at least wanted to get this conversation kicked off because there's so much more that we can talk about. For those of you that are stopping by for the first time to the channel, thank you. I appreciate you. I hope you'll come back and please subscribe. And those of you that are regular, thank you for your support. Continue to do so and spread the word out there. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Danny, again. And to everyone, please take care. God bless and peace.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network